Over in the upper right, I've got Create Query. And we're going to run queries in a couple different ways. Again, when we're running a query, you'll get this little blue box, and so you could just not ever see it again if you wanted, but just letting you know that you're responsible for what happens with your data, because queries are very powerful, and it's the full complement of PostgreSQL queries that we can run. So one of the things that we could do is we could with a query combine data from different data sets and create a new data set from that query. In fact, we will do that later on in another module. But this is a query editor here, and we could type in a query here. For example, if I just typed in, let's get my cursor in there, show, and I get a little syntax helper here, and oops, not share, I wanted show. There we go. And how about tables? And so I'll use my little cursor, come down to tables. Let me give it a semicolon at the end. And now what I can do is I can click this go button, or it shows me what the keyboard command is for running this query. Well, let's just try that. So I'm going to hold down Shift and press Enter, and looks like that query ran. Oftentimes when it does that, it thinks you're wanting to continue the query building out, so it'll give you this drop down, but this is what I wanted. So I already have the results here for that query. Now, using this query editor here, for the return results, you'll get 100 rows maximum. So if what you're querying for is greater than 100 rows, then it won't display in the results area of the editor. But still, the full query has been run. It's just what is being displayed. If I go over to the console tab right down here, it tells me that the query made a successful connection to the data sets, to the data lake, ran the query, and then I get information on how fast the query ran. In this case, didn't get anywhere near close to that 100 row maximum, just 11 rows were returned here for the different tables. And one of the things that I didn't point out, but let me go back to it now. By the way, notice this left bar here now just has the symbols, and as opposed to the text. And so, but I can mouse over and I can see this is schemas and this is data sets. And let me click there, and I'm going to get this data set right here. So each of these data sets has a data set name, has a data set ID. There's the data set name with a link, and I could click that and then go to that other window, same as clicking this blue link over here. But it also has a table name. So in order to run SQL against this data set, I need to have the name of the data set in a certain format, in this type of table format. So each time a data set is created and named with the data set name, it'll also create a table name for that data set so it can be queried. All right, back over here to queries. And like I say, we're going to work with this tool or the query service, really, including with the query editor here, but also making queries from a couple of other external tools that we'll be showing you. Also under data management, I have this monitoring tool, and this lets me see, what batches of data has come in. I got the streaming tab, and I can see any streaming data. So for this particular instance, we don't have a lot of data coming in yet. And notice the time over here, last 7 days, batch also last 7 days. I've got this little calendar, and I could select a different date range, or I got this default button option here, last 30 days, that I could select that and click apply. Let's just try that, see if we've had any data come in the last 30 days. Okay, so nope, not. Well, rather than hunting those down based on time, we'll be seeing that as we bring data in from different data sources, and we could come in and take a look at that in monitoring. Decisioning is below that, and here I have offers, and this is where I could create offers, and some of you are very familiar with this and others maybe not so much. And so what offers would be, let's just use the website as an example. And so maybe based on my behavior, current behavior on the website or previous behavior, what I could do is set it up so that the original content on a web page, for example, was replaced with alternate content based on an offer for me that I would see on the website. And so, and again, you notice the different tabs here. We actually are going to have an entire class which has a module that will cover creating offers and then what the different activities are. And notice things like status and start and end date. And we'll be covering all of this in that module in another class. Finally, down here, administration. And when you are in your instance of platform for your company, you might or might not have access to everything that we're seeing here. I've got full access, and so I'm trying to show you all the features and where you can find them. But again, based on your different access settings, you might or might not see some of the features that we're seeing throughout the class, and that would include these things called sandboxes. So what you can have in Data Workbench is sandboxes that you could set up here. We've set up one for prod, and then we just named one for development, which is sandbox 1, but you could have multiple sandboxes. These oftentimes are used for doing things like you want to make some changes, but you don't want to do it in production. You want to test it first. And so in your development environment, you might test out some new features, some new data sets, new schemas, and so forth. And then if everything is working well, move those over to production. That's the primary use of these sandboxes. For some of our classes, we use the sandboxes because the sandboxes can be set up to a particular state, and then when we're done with, in our case, training, or in your case, development, we can reset or recycle the sandbox back to its original state. So I want to come back up here to where I see production. So that's this, and production is called also a sandbox, but obviously that's different than the other sandboxes, and production is not one that you want to recycle. You want to do your experimentation and development down in another sandbox. And then when you're finished with whatever you've been working on, you could recycle that sandbox. But right up here, what I could do is I could click this drop down and I could go to this sandbox. I'm not going to bother to do it. It takes a few minutes to build the screen, but that's how I would get to this sandbox one. I can, if I have permissions, I can create other sandboxes, and it'll be determined by your contract how many sandboxes that you get. And so some of you may be involved in those discussions or those negotiations. But this is where I could create additional sandboxes. Once I did that, then they would appear over here in this drop-down list. All right. Well, I think that gets us through a lot of where things are tucked away. This has been a kind of a quick walkthrough. It just touched on a number of things. As I mentioned, a number of these things will have modules on where we get into more depth. Other items will be in other classes. For example, we're not going to be in this class creating schemas, but we do have a class called Extended Customize, where we get into the details of creating a schema and then also importing data. And then one of the things that we don't get into in this class are what we call the application services. And those, for some of you, may be of extreme importance, things like customer journey analytics, customer journey orchestration, and also real-time CDP. Those we don't cover in this class, but we do have a class called Application Services. So we're about to roll out several new classes, and then there'll be a continuous stream of new classes coming online in the foreseeable future. And we'll be continuing to extend our training for Experience Platform. We do, and you could just spread the word on this, we do recommend that everyone take this class before taking other classes. Now, it's not always necessary, but it can be kind of difficult in some of the other classes if you just don't even know how to get around in the interface. So that's why we recommend this class as a starter class.